But Albert Einstein had this to say about soul and spirit. That which is impenetrable to us really exists.
Not all who harm come with knives. Some come with compliments, with warmth, with words like, "I care about you," or "I'm only doing this because I love you." But underneath that surface, soft as silk, is something else entirely, a hunger to control you. This is the first sign that someone is a soulless being, when someone wraps power in the language of love. The hunger for power disguised as love. At first it may feel like care. They pay close attention to you, always seem to know where you are, what you're feeling, what you're thinking. They remember everything you say, sometimes even more than you do. You feel seen, chosen, special. But soon, that attention starts to tighten. The questions get sharper, the compliments more loaded, the warmth becomes conditional. You'll only feel loved when you're behaving in a way that keeps them comfortable. When you step out of line, even slightly, you'll feel it. The cold shift, the silence, the subtle punishment masked as concern. And if you speak up, they'll say, "I'm just trying to help." Or worse, "This is what love looks like." But it's not. This isn't real love. This is love repurposed as a leash. In the words of Carl Jung, where love rules, there is no will to power, and where power predominates, love is lacking. He knew what many still struggle to see, that the two are fundamentally incompatible. Real love frees, power disguised as love imprisons, and those who are disconnected from their soul, those who live hollowed out, don't seek connection for its own sake. They seek control, not to feel close to you, but to feel alive through you. They fear losing control because beneath the mask they've already lost themselves. This isn't always loud. In fact, the most dangerous form of control is quiet. It looks like sacrifice. It sounds like devotion. But if you look closely, it costs you something. Little by little, you become smaller in their presence. You learn to second-guess your instincts. You stop expressing your needs, not because they told you to, but because you learned that being fully yourself is what makes their love disappear. This dynamic shows up across cultures. In certain Eastern philosophies, particularly some interpretations of Maya in Hindu thought, illusion is seen as the greatest barrier to spiritual freedom. One form of this illusion is emotional entanglement, the kind where what looks like love is really bondage. It distracts the soul from its path by keeping it tangled in fear, guilt, and longing for approval. Soulless beings become masters of this illusion. They don't just want your affection, they want your submission. And to keep you close, they use one of the most effective tactics, love bombing. An overwhelming flood of affection early on designed to create a dependency. Once you're hooked, they pull back, just enough to make you chase, just enough to make you doubt whether what you felt was ever real. And the worst part, you start believing that maybe it was you who changed. Maybe you stopped being lovable. Maybe you need to fix something to get that love back. But it was never about love. It was about ownership, and someone who seeks to own you cannot truly love you. There's a parable from the Sufi mystic Rumi that says, "You were born with wings, why prefer to crawl through life?" A soul disfigured by control will always try to clip your wings, not because they hate you, but because your flight reminds them they've forgotten how to soar. And here's the hard truth. Some of these beings will never admit what they're doing, not even to themselves. They don't believe they're controlling you. They believe they're protecting you, that you are the chaotic one, that they are simply the steady hand guiding the way. But look at your life, look at your energy. Are you shrinking to fit inside someone else's idea of safety? Are you being loved in a way that feels more like surveillance than support? Because someone who truly loves you will not ask you to shrink. They will not panic when you grow. They will not mistake obedience for devotion. A soul-connected person will love you through your changes, your messiness, your fire. A soulless one will try to freeze you in the version that serves them best. So if someone's love feels more like a cage than a shelter, pay attention. If every act of care comes with a string attached, untangle yourself. And if you're starting to forget who you were before they entered your life, you may be dealing with someone who has no real intention of loving you, only using your energy to feed what they lack. Because love is not possession. Love is liberation, and anyone who tells you otherwise isn't showing you love. They're showing you what it looks like when power pretends to care. Once you spot these patterns, you'll start noticing that some people you meet feel off. The smile that doesn't reach the eyes. They say the right things. They smile at the right moments. They follow the script of what a normal person should be. And yet, something inside you recoils. It's like being in the presence of something hollow pretending to be full, something that wears a mask too well. You start to question your instincts. You tell yourself you're overthinking. But deep down, the unease doesn't go away. In fact, it starts to grow. This feeling isn't just paranoia. In many spiritual traditions, from the shamans of the Amazon to the esoteric teachings of the East, there is a belief that not all who walk in human skin carry the full light of a soul. Some are not truly empty, but disconnected. Others have become something else entirely. These are not horror movie monsters. They don't look different, but they move through the world like actors without a real script of humanity. Carl Jung once wrote that the most terrifying thing is to accept oneself completely. Now imagine someone who has never even tried. Not because they're afraid, but because there is nothing there to return to. No depth, no real self beneath the layers, only mirrors, only hunger. And yet, these people don't stand out in crowds. In fact, many are charming, polished, successful. Some even make you feel seen, until you realize they were only studying you to reflect you back to gain your trust. This is the first red flag, not what they say, not even what they do, but what you don't feel in their presence. You might notice it as a strange deadness behind the eyes, or a smile that seems perfectly rehearsed, but never quite lands. You walk away from a conversation feeling drained, even though nothing bad happened. And slowly the thought begins to whisper, something is missing here. In ancient Hebrew mysticism, the Kabbalists warned of a type of being known as the Qliphoth, shells without spirit. These were not demons in the Hollywood sense, but rather distortions. Vessels once meant for light, but now hollow. They warned that contact with such beings was dangerous, not because they had power, but because they pulled others into forgetfulness. And that is exactly what the first sign is, the absence of real presence. It sounds simple, but it isn't. Because presence is not the same as attention. Presence is being. It's the way a person's energy wraps around their words. It's the depth you feel, even in their silence. A truly soulful person doesn't need to perform. There's a resonance in their eyes, a groundedness in their stillness. But someone who has lost their soul, or never fully awakened it, cannot fake this presence. No matter how charming they are, they feel flat if you listen with your intuition. You'll feel like you're speaking through glass, as if everything you say is being filed away, but never truly received. In Buddhist teachings, there is the story of the hungry ghost. These are entities that have human form, but are cursed with insatiable appetites. No matter how much they eat, drink, or consume, they are never full. Many who seem soulless are exactly like this. Their attention feels like hunger, not connection. Their praise feels like manipulation, not care. And when you try to get close, there's always something missing. Warmth, vulnerability, humanness. The smile that doesn't reach the eyes is not just a missed facial cue. It's an energetic message. It says, I know what I'm supposed to feel, but I don't feel it. I know what I should look like, but I don't live it. And often, they don't even realize they're doing this. They've spent years learning how to be seen, but never how to be. It's hard to accept. We want to believe everyone has a soul, that everyone can love, that everyone means well, and many do. But some are so disconnected from their own essence, so estranged from the divine spark, that they become hollow reflections of who they were meant to be. And being around them, if you're not careful, can make you feel hollow too. So if you meet someone and everything looks right on the surface, but your inner world feels dulled or drained, pay attention. That inner whisper, that tug of the gut, that sense of disconnection in the middle of eye contact, that's not just social discomfort. That could be your deeper self picking up on something your conscious mind hasn't yet named. Some people aren't soulless because they were born that way. Some become that way through abandonment of self, of truth, of love. Over time, their inner flame dims, and in its place, they wear a performance. And if you aren't awake to the signs, that performance can wrap around you like a charm until you forget your own light. But you can feel the difference. You've felt it before. One person enters a room and your spirit lifts. Another enters and something in you steps back. That's not just personality, that's soul. And if there's one thing to remember as we move through this series, it's this. Not everyone lost in the dark wants to be found, and not every hollow smile deserves your attention. They trigger spiritual sickness around them. You can't always see it right away, but stay around them long enough and something begins to rot beneath the surface, in you. Not your body, not your mind, something deeper. Your dreams turn darker, your thoughts grow heavier. People around them get sick more often, feel drained, lose motivation, and no one knows why. This is what some traditions call spiritual sickness. It doesn't always show up as an illness you can measure with a thermometer. Sometimes it starts with a numbness in your soul, a fatigue that doesn't go away no matter how much you sleep, a sudden fogginess in your thinking, a tightness in your chest around certain people, for no logical reason. That's the thing. This isn't logical, it's energetic. And when a soulless being enters your field, they don't just trigger discomfort. They often trigger imbalance, fragmentation, even despair. It's like something inside you starts to shut down, not because you're weak, but because it senses danger. In some African spiritual traditions, this would be considered a loss of ash, the life force or sacred power within you. When you're near someone who has lost their connection to spirit, your own asha gets disturbed. You might start doubting yourself. You might feel like you're unraveling, but the unraveling doesn't begin with you. It begins with the presence that carries nothing and pulls from everything. That's what soulless beings do. They don't radiate, they absorb. They don't heal, they hollow. And they often bring with them an energy that your body, your aura, your gut instinct recognizes before your mind catches up. You'll feel it when you leave their company and suddenly need silence. You'll feel it when your confidence shrinks after being with them. You'll feel it when the joy you carried slowly turns to dust. This isn't drama, it's spiritual survival. And when your inner world begins to ache around someone, it's not always your trauma talking. Sometimes it's your soul whispering, "Get away." The absence of empathy and the mastery of mimicry. Soulless beings, or more precisely, those who have become deeply disconnected from their soul, often don't understand emotion, but they've watched enough people to know how to perform it. They've seen how compassion looks. They've studied how kindness sounds. They've learned the right words, the right pauses, the right way to lean forward at just the right moment. This is the fourth sign. A deep absence of empathy, hidden beneath a frightening ability to mimic it. But none of it feels real, because it isn't. The French philosopher Jean Baudrillard once spoke of something eerily similar. In his work on hyperreality, he warned of a world in which simulations, copies without originals, replace real experiences. In this world, we begin to accept the appearance of meaning as meaning itself. A soulless person operates like this. They present a simulation of empathy, and in a world that prizes surface over depth, few people stop long enough to notice. But you might. You might notice that when you're truly in pain, their comfort feels mechanical. Their sympathy lacks warmth. You might see how their understanding is really just a reflection of your words. They don't feel with you, they mirror you. And it's more than just being emotionally distant. True emotional distance is honest. It's someone saying, "I don't know what to say, but I'm here." The soulless mimic will never admit this. They'll pretend to know exactly what you need. They'll offer the perfect response, but underneath it, there's nothing. Not because they're evil, but because they've become estranged from their own feeling body, from their own humanity. In ancient Taoist thought, there's a belief that real virtue, Di, in the Tao Te Ching, comes not from effort, but from alignment with the Tao, the natural way of things. When someone has lost their center, they lose this effortless goodness. What remains is false virtue, the performance of compassion without its root, like flowers made of paper, pretty but lifeless. A person who has lost empathy will use your emotion as information. If you cry, they will remember that tears are a cue to say something gentle. If you're angry, they'll study your triggers, not to respect your boundaries, but to manipulate them better next time. They are not truly with you, they are watching you, always. And when you begin to pull back, when you notice the subtle chill in their kindness, the lack of resonance in their concern, they might accuse you of being cold. Why? because the soulless being fears exposure. Your awareness becomes a threat, and if they can't mirror you anymore, they can't control the story. But here's the deeper truth. This absence of empathy isn't always born of malice. Sometimes it's born of deep trauma. A person so wounded, so abandoned in their early life, that the only way to survive was to cut themselves off from their feeling center. Over time, they forgot they even had one, and yet, intentions aside, the effect is the same. If you're not careful, you begin to doubt your own perceptions. You start thinking maybe you're the one who's too sensitive. You excuse their coldness. You normalize their emotional emptiness, because they wear the mask so well. But you cannot build intimacy on a performance. You cannot heal alongside someone who cannot feel, and you cannot save someone who isn't searching for their soul. So how do you tell the difference between someone who is guarded and someone who is hollow? Start by noticing how they respond to vulnerability. Do they lean in with presence, or do they pivot to performance? Do they offer space, or do they offer solutions that sound copied from a movie? Most importantly, notice how you feel around them. Not how they make you feel, but what your body tells you. Soulless people don't just leave you drained, they leave you numb, like you were heard but not held, like you revealed your heart and found yourself talking to a wall with eyes. Empathy is not a skill, it's not a trick, it's a current. When someone truly has it, it moves between you like breath, invisible but alive. So when you meet someone who seems perfect, but somehow makes you feel lonelier the longer you speak, stop, listen. That's not connection, that's mimicry. And in a world that forgets how to feel, that might be the most dangerous thing of all. The distortion of truth and the pathological use of confusion. Even worse, soulless beings often don't lie like ordinary manipulators do. They lie with a purpose. Their goal isn't simply to deceive, their goal is to disorient. They don't just deny facts, they twist your perception of reality until you start questioning your own sanity. This is one of the most unsettling signs of a soulless being. Their relationship with truth is not just casual, it is weaponized. This isn't clumsiness, it's design. In French philosophy, there's a term Michel Foucault explored called power/knowledge. He argued that those who control knowledge, what people believe to be true, also control power. Soulless beings understand this instinctively. They may not study philosophy, but they operate by its darker currents. Because if they can control your version of the story, they can control you. You might remember a conversation one way, they'll swear it never happened. You'll say they hurt you. They'll say you're being dramatic. And little by little, you stop trusting your instincts. You lose your grip on the thread. That's exactly what they want. Because once you stop trusting your truth, you start relying on theirs. This distortion of truth is sometimes called gaslighting, a term that comes from the old play where a man convinces his wife she's going insane by dimming the gaslights and pretending nothing has changed. It's become a common phrase now, but in the presence of someone hollow, someone disconnected from the sacredness of truth, it's more than a tactic. It becomes a daily fog you live inside. And the worst part, they seem calm. They don't argue with rage, they argue with ease, with subtle smiles, with a kind of confidence that makes you doubt yourself even more. Because they're not trying to win the argument, they're trying to make you unfit to argue at all. This emotional instability isn't just exhausting, it's addictive. Like a gambler at a slot machine, you're wired to chase the next high. You tell yourself, maybe if I act differently, maybe if I say it better, maybe this time they'll return to the version of themselves that once made you feel safe. But that version, it was never fully real. It was bait. A soulless being knows how to reflect the version of themselves you want to see. They'll mirror your dreams, your values, your language, until you believe they're your twin flame. But it's all strategy, not spiritual resonance. So how do you tell the difference? It comes down to clarity. When you are around someone who is soulful, you feel more like yourself. Your thoughts are clearer. Your truth is stronger. You feel grounded, even in conflict. When you're around someone soulless, the opposite happens. You walk away foggy. You start questioning things you used to be sure of. You replay every conversation, wondering what you did wrong. But that's the trick. It was never about you being wrong. It was about them making sure you never feel right. Because the more disoriented you are, the easier you are to lead. If you've ever left a conversation feeling like your mind has been spun in circles, if you've ever apologized for things you didn't do, just to keep the peace. If you've ever had to write things down just to remember your own truth, you may be in the presence of someone who uses distortion as their default mode of interaction, and that is no small red flag. It's a spiritual alarm bell. Soulless beings aren't always overtly evil. Many are charming, articulate, even admired by others. But that's what makes them so dangerous, because their most potent weapon isn't aggression, it's confusion. And when they begin to rewrite your reality, it's your spirit that starts to dim. So if you feel like your inner compass has been tampered with, don't ignore it, don't explain it away, and don't wait for more proof. Clarity is your birthright. Protect it. The emotional void that feeds on your light. Moving forward, know that soulless beings often seek out highly sensitive, intuitive people, not because they appreciate them, but because they need them. Your emotions, your presence, your glow, it becomes their battery. You feel drained around them because they're always taking and giving just enough to keep you nearby. It's not just that they avoid vulnerability, it's that they don't feel things the way you do. When you're in pain, they go cold. When you open up, they grow distant. When something sacred moves you, music, a moment, the beauty of nature, they smile, but it doesn't reach their soul. You're left wondering if they even have one. This is why, even though they seem emotionally dull or flat, they're strangely drawn to intense emotional situations. They provoke reactions, they create drama. They watch you break down with almost clinical curiosity, and then blame you for being too emotional. Over time, you begin to suppress your natural feelings just to protect yourself from their judgment. But in doing so, you dim your light even more. It's no accident. They're drawn to your glow but resent the fact that they don't have it. And that resentment shows up in subtle ways. They belittle your passions. They roll their eyes when you talk about spirituality or dreams. They make you feel childish for caring too much. But you're not childish. You're awake. And their emotional void can't handle that. Sometimes this emptiness is wrapped in intellect. They'll speak with sharp logic, endless facts, clever arguments. But underneath the surface, there's no warmth, no wonder, no feeling. They've built walls so high around their soul that they don't even know they're imprisoned. And what happens when you love someone like that? You start trying to fill the void. You give more, you shine brighter, you start thinking that your light can heal them, but it never does. Because what they need isn't love. They need to feel their own emptiness. And as long as you keep patching their holes with your own energy, they never will. In some branches of ancient Taoist thought, there is the idea of Hun and Po, two souls that coexist within each person. The Hun is the spiritual soul, the part that seeks heaven, truth, meaning. The Po is the earthly soul, tied to physical needs and instincts. Harmony between the two brings balance, but when someone has completely abandoned their Hun, or never awakened it at all, they operate only from base desire and control. You can feel it. They look alive, but inside there is no echo when you call. You may have met someone like that. No passion, no grief, no awe, only hunger. The hunger to feed on your spark without ever offering theirs in return. And here's the thing, many of them don't even realize they're doing it. It's not a grand scheme, it's just how they move through the world, consuming, imitating, surviving. They're not monsters, but they are hollow, and when you're deeply empathetic, it's hard to walk away. You'll feel sorry for them, you'll want to help. You'll tell yourself they didn't mean to hurt you, but intention doesn't erase impact. You were not put here to bleed for people who refuse to feel. You were not born to shrink just to avoid reminding someone of what they lack. And if you've ever felt like your light has been used, like your joy has been mocked, like your tenderness became a target, then maybe, just maybe, you've touched the edge of that void. So how do you protect yourself? Not with anger, but with clarity. You don't need to prove that someone is soulless. You only need to pay attention to how they make you feel. When your spirit starts to dim, that is your sign. That is your answer. And maybe the most powerful thing you can do, stop trying to give your warmth to those who can only feel power in your exhaustion. Walk away, not because you hate them, but because you love yourself enough not to become a vessel for their emptiness. The strange stillness, behind their eyes, and why your instinct shudders before your mind understands. Next, know that in many traditions, especially among the shamans of the Amazon, and the folk seers of the Andes, there is a belief that the eyes do more than see. They show, they reveal the condition of the spirit. A person who is spiritually present, they say, has eyes that speak. You feel them even before they speak. Even when they say nothing, they carry something warm, something alive. This is one of the most subtle and most chilling signs of a soulless being. That strange stillness behind the eyes, a stillness not of peace, but of absence. You're looking at someone, but no one's really looking back. Soulless beings don't carry that. Their eyes are still. Their presence is motionless. Not in the calm way of a wise monk, but in the eerie way of a statue. You feel it when you sit across from them. You try to explain it to others. I don't know, they just felt off. But you can't quite find the words. That's because what you're sensing isn't on the surface. It's deeper, and your instincts pick it up long before your logic catches up. This is not about paranoia. It's not about demonizing quiet people or those who are emotionally reserved. It's about learning to trust that ancient inner signal, your body's whisper that says danger, even when everything on the outside looks perfectly polished. French philosopher Emmanuel Levinas once said that the face, especially the eyes, is where our ethical responsibility is born. It's where the other speaks to us, not just in language, but in being. When you look into the eyes of someone who is truly present, you feel their otherness, their spark, their pain, their humanness. But with the soulless, that reflection is missing. Instead, what you feel is a subtle mimicry, a performance of personality. They blink, they nod, they speak, but it doesn't land, it doesn't carry. It's like watching someone replay human emotion from memory, not from feeling. You might even catch them studying your face too closely, mimicking your tone, your expressions, as if they're watching a show they're trying to fit into. And still, something doesn't connect. This stillness behind the eyes isn't about evil. It's about absence. The absence of soul doesn't always come with cruelty. Sometimes it's even wrapped in charm, in warmth, in the illusion of care. But it's hollow, and your nervous system knows it. That's why you feel tired after talking to them, or why despite their compliments, you feel unseen, or why you wake up days later still thinking about a glance that made you uneasy. Because your deeper mind never stopped scanning it. In certain Tibetan Buddhist teachings, there's an idea that the soul, not the body, is what moves energy between lives. When the soul is not fully present in the body, or when it is deeply blocked, the body may still function, but the essence is missing. And in that state, they say, the being can no longer offer true presence. They become a mask. Sometimes this happens from trauma, sometimes from choice, sometimes from centuries of spiritual numbness. But the result is the same. Something essential has been lost, and those around them can feel it, even if they've never studied a single mystical text. You don't need a PhD to know when someone is hollow. Your breath shortens, your muscles tense, your heart pulls back, not out of cruelty, but out of protection. You're not imagining it. The eyes are not just organs of sight, they are windows of spirit, and when there's no light behind them, no flicker, no depth, no pull, you're not being rude for noticing. You are being wise. And here's the painful truth. You might love someone with those eyes. You might care deeply for them. You might have spent years trying to awaken something that was never really there. And that's where this sign gets dangerous. Because your heart wants to believe what the body already rejected. You'll rationalize, you'll explain, you'll forgive. But no amount of kindness can bring a soul back that does not want to return. So what do? You listen. Not to their words, not to their charm, but to the part of you that felt the chill, even when they smiled. You honor the signal that said something's not right, and you walk, if not away, then inward, because your safety, your sanity, your light is not worth trading for someone else's silence. Even if they never raised their voice, even if they never hurt you, even if they smiled and said all the right things, their eyes told you the truth. They don't dream like you do, and why that matters more than you think. Soulless beings have an even more unsettling trait, and you may not notice it until one night, maybe after a long talk or a strange silence, you ask them, "What do you dream about?" And they say, "I don't." Or worse, they smile and change the subject. This might not seem like much at first. Plenty of people claim they don't dream. But when someone shows many of the signs we've talked about, when the air around them feels off, when their presence drains rather than fills, when their words feel practiced and their eyes feel vacant, this becomes something else entirely. Because dreaming, in many ancient and spiritual traditions, is more than just what happens at night. It's a mirror of the soul, a language the unconscious uses when words fall short, a reminder that there's something deeper happening inside of you, even when you're not watching. In the Toltec tradition, which comes from ancient Mesoamerican teachings, dreaming is considered a sacred act. Not just something that happens to you, but something you do. Toltec seers believe that true warriors of the spirit learn to dream consciously, to walk between the worlds of the seen and unseen, to receive visions, teachings, and even warnings while their body sleeps. It's not fantasy, it's training, it's contact, it's proof that your soul is active. So what happens when someone doesn't dream? Or more specifically, what happens when someone can't dream? You're not just looking at a sleep pattern, you're looking at spiritual blockage, or spiritual absence. Soulless beings, those who have either lost contact with their essence, or who have willingly severed their thread to something higher, often exist in a kind of flat spiritual terrain. No intuitive flashes, no dream messages, no inner dialogues guiding their path. If they do describe dreams, they're often mechanical, empty, or confusing in a way that goes nowhere. Because the soul, when it's alive, longs to speak. And one of the clearest, oldest ways it does that is through dreams. You've felt this before. You've had a dream so clear it felt more real than waking life. Maybe it showed you someone you hadn't spoken to in years. Maybe it warned you of something that came true. Maybe it brought you peace, or shook you to your bones. But deep down, you knew. That meant something. Soulless beings don't know that feeling, or if they do, they've forgotten. Their dreams, if they have any at all, are like echoes in an empty hallway. No center, no symbols that linger, no sense of mystery that pulls them deeper into their own growth. And that matters, because people who dream, even when the dreams are terrifying, are people who still have a living channel to their soul. They are still in the conversation, still receiving. Dreams are how your shadow speaks, how your ancestors visit, how your guides whisper. Soulless beings, on the other hand, have no such visitors, or if they do, they shut the door. This is why, around them, you might start to lose your own dreams. You stop remembering. You wake up dull. You lose that golden thread that once felt so strong. That's not coincidence. Sometimes their energy, cold, flattened, and unfeeling, seeps into yours and mutes the volume of your inner life. And that's when you need to ask, what is this presence doing to my spirit? Do I feel more alive after talking to them, or more empty? Do I dream more clearly after spending time with them, or less? Because in the deepest part of you, you already know. Souls recognize each other by the way they speak across silence, by the dreams they share, by the feeling of something more. You've felt that. You've dreamed things you couldn't explain. You've woken up crying, laughing, remembering, knowing. That's not random. That's the echo of your soul. And when someone never meets you there, never even tries, when their inner world feels as silent as their eyes, you're not wrong to wonder what's really going on behind the mask. This is not about judging others. It's about protecting yourself. You're a dreamer. Whether you remember them or not, your soul speaks every night. It works through grief. It brings visions. It processes the unspeakable. You're alive across many layers of being, not just this waking one. So when someone stands beside you, without that same spark, without that same conversation running in the background, it's not about shaming them. It's about recognizing the truth. Some people are not asleep. They are empty. And if you don't notice that soon enough, they might pull you down into that emptiness too. They are walking, echoes, not living souls. The final sign is perhaps the hardest to face, because it's not about what they say or do. It's about what they lack, in the most essential sense. A spark, a self, a source. Some people are alive, others are animated. There's a difference. In ancient Gnostic teachings, these kinds of beings were called hilics, those who are so immersed in the material that the spiritual light no longer reaches them. They can't feel it, can't hear it, can't even seek it, because the seeker within is gone. In Vedic philosophy, it's said some souls become so entangled in tamas, the energy of inertia, darkness, ignorance, that they sink into spiritual sleep for lifetimes, and in that sleep something hardens, something dies. These beings walk among us, but they are not with us. They're like echoes of people who never fully arrived. And here's the most chilling part. They often attract great power, not because they are wise, but because they are easy to use. Without a soul anchoring their choices, they can become tools for darker forces, for manipulation, for spiritual interference. You can see it in their eyes. The stillness isn't peaceful, it's vacant. You can feel it in their energy. The coldness isn't calm, it's void. And you know, deep down, that no matter how much love, care, or healing you pour into them, it doesn't reach, because there's no one truly home to receive it. These beings may have been born with a soul, but over time, through betrayal of their inner truth, abandonment of empathy, and immersion in illusion, they lost the thread. They cut themselves off, and now they walk like mirrors that show nothing back. You may want to save them. You may want to believe something good is still buried in there. But this is the truth that will set you free. You cannot resurrect what has chosen to decay. Some people are here to teach you about love, some are here to help you grow, and some are here to remind you that discernment is spiritual protection. When someone shows you a hollow shell, believe it. When the spark is gone, you don't have to pretend it's still flickering. Walk away, not with hate, with clarity, because your soul is alive, and nothing dead should be allowed to feed from that. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, don't forget to subscribe to the channel. Thanks for watching.